Allahu Akbar, a simple Arabic word that means God is great, is used by Muslims to praise God anytime, any day, anywhere. The phrase is also a convenient way to express gratitude to Allah in any situation by billions of Muslims worldwide. But for some non-Muslims, the word Allahu Akbar instills a sense of fear and trepidation brought about by extremists and blackmailers who hide under the umbrella of the peaceful religion.
Okay, when people say that, I know sometimes they can say it to scare people like there's a terror attack.
Every day from morning to the time we go to bed, Allahu Akbar is part of our lives.
In the recent past, according to academics, Islam's definition has long changed, and that has got everything to do with geopolitics emanating from the superpowers of the Western continents.
And the geopolitics of the last century was about dominance. And there is a concept that pervades the East, especially the Middle East, and it is about the strong man. And also it is about a culture that thrives on a concept called me and my brother against my cousin. Me, my cousin, my brother, my cousin against the neighbor. Me, my cousin, my brother, my cousin, my neighbor against the stranger. Now, how does that play about? It's about resources. So because the resources are so limited, we have to guard them. And so there are layers of relationship that are going to define the way we're going to relate and the way we're going to share resources.
Professor Sheikh Ibrahim Lithome is the Secretary General of BRAVE and a legal advisor to the Supreme Council of Kenya Muslims, SUPKEM. Sheikh Lithome says that terror groups use the phrase as a rallying call and hide behind Islam to advance their vested interests.
So it's not a war against people who are not Muslims. Because in Somalia, they are killing fellow Muslims. In Syria, they are killing fellow Muslims who are Arabs there. So it's not Islam. But look at it this way. Look at the epicenter of Al-Shabaab, Somalia and the Horn of Africa. Who are the majority of the people living there? Muslims. The predominant religion is Islam. So for you to get support, you must come up with an ideology that is appealing to the people, the majority of the people living there.
Khair, a Kenyan of Somali descent, has been wearing the hijab for the better part of her adult life. She says that negative comments from people stem from the fact that they do not fully understand Islam and its precepts.
We are just tolerating each other. Oh, this is a Christian, this is a Muslim. I shouldn't say this, but I don't like this and this about them. That's tolerance, and I think that's what's causing all these problems.
25-year-old Osman Mohammed Osman is a journalist working with an international media house. Osman was born and raised in Kiambu, one of the Kenya's most populated counties. His father diligently served the country Kenya by being part of the disciplined forces, in particular, the army. For a man whose father was once a soldier who with dedication, pride and determination protected his country Kenya and its territories, his experience of Islamophobia is for sure dreadful. Osman's first local publication as a freshman at the United States International University, USIU, was dubbed Prisoner of My Identity, an idea that he says came to him out of his Islamophobia experience that forced him to question his own identity. According to Osman, even as he confesses his Kenyanness, which he swore long ago to uphold and respect, at one point, Osman was torn between confessing his patriotic allegiances and his ethnic affiliation, all because of what he terms as Somaliphobia.
As second-generation Somalis who grew up with other Kenyans, it's something that has really been difficult for us. And, trying to just question ourselves, who are we? Because first, like our grandfathers were forced to be part of this country. Now, 2 generations later, now it's a way of, the rhetoric keeps on growing that, you're not really Kenyans, you're part of them.
Even worse is when he finds himself covering terror stories in Kenya, where Osman gets stuck between his community and the government, both parties not having a complete trust in him.
Fellow Somalis who probably will fear you in a way. They'll say, you're Kenyan Somali, and they think probably I'm a person who, probably I'm an agent of the government. I'm coming to collect information. The other thing is, it's also delicate from the other side. Probably I'm doing a story which needs more investigation, and you're trying to push the government for answers. But at the same time, around that time, like, you can feel the fear because you're ethnic Somali. The government can label you as you're not just a journalist. Probably you're part of them.
Whenever Al-Shabaab attacks innocent Kenyans, Supreme Council of Kenya Muslims SUPKEM has had to come out and strongly condemn the heinous acts and categorically state that killings are executed by terrorists but not Muslims. That, however, has had very little conviction on some Kenyans who have been terrified by what they see and hear on televisions and radios.
If it's not in a mosque setup nearby, or maybe if that sound is not coming from TV, what comes to mind is something which is not very good is about to happen.
After the Dusit attack, and I was just around audience, so someone called me, well, Al-Shabaab kuja nunua viatu. Yeah, so they're such, I really don't mind them, but at some point, you might say to someone who might take it personally.
A religion that tells you it's prohibited to kill an animal for sport. How can the same religion tell you kill a fellow human being? It cannot be. It is a contradiction.
Scholars observe that the images and stories carried by both print and broadcast media have contributed immensely to Islamophobia.
The headlines were shouting, screaming, 28 Christian teachers killed by Islamist terrorists. What are you telling the people? Must you mention the religion of these? These are Kenyans who have been killed. And these are criminals who have done it. Must you always say the religion of the criminal? A criminal is a criminal.
There is the other side, the side of the West where we have people who are extremely rich. They have not been able to do what is required of them. And also they're the ones who control media. So what narrative comes out of the West? Who controls the media? And then how do you propagate the dominant narrative?
So this idea of calling them Islamists or jihadists and the rest, actually you're even glorifying them. Because when you call them jihadists, you're associating whatever they are doing with jihad, which is a concept in Islam. Actually, you are even winning support for them.
So Islamophobia is an industry, a profit industry that is functioning on very high speed, and there is people that profit from propagating hate to the population.
What is jihad then, if jihad is not war? Jihad is literally striving, struggling, and it ranges from even looking for your daily sustenance, going to work. That is your jihad. What you are doing now as a journalist is your jihad. Why don't you call them what they are? Terrorists, criminals. We should call them that.
However, the government of Kenya has been categorical in upholding the right to worship as enshrined in the country's constitution promulgated in 2010. Article 32 of the proposed constitution states that every person shall have the right to freedom of conscience, religion, thought, belief, and opinion. It adds that every person shall be entitled to exercise that freedom through worship practice, teaching, or observance of a day of worship alone or with others.
Every Kenyan must understand that this is a war that requires that we all be united as a nation and that we stand shoulder to shoulder to face the enemy of humanity.
No wall, no ban, no wall.
Muslims living in Western nations are not exempt to Islamophobia either. Congresswoman Ilhan Omar was attacked several times by the White House for being a Muslim woman of color. Luckily, she got support even from the Congress, which further condemned Donald Trump's allegedly racist tweets.
And obviously and importantly, Omar has a history of launching vicious anti-Semitic screeds.
We know Donald Trump would love nothing more than to use this issue to pit Muslims and Jewish Americans against each other. The Muslim community and the Jewish community are being othered and made into the boogeyman by this administration.
Ilhan Omar, who is a Black African Somali Muslim refugee woman, was threat to this narrative and this perception that they have created of Muslims. She is an independent Muslim woman who challenges all the conceptions that they have of our religion, that they have of Black people, that they have of Africans, of refugees. So she is a challenge and she's a threat to the status quo. So that is why she's making such waves.
When it's a Muslim attacking a non-Muslim, it's a terrorist attack. But when it's a far-right group attacking Muslims, there is nothing. It's either a collusion, or he's got a mental illness, or some sort of other excuses. The life history of that guy comes out.
Now, if that ain't violence or intimidation or act of terrorism, I don't know what is. Well, to be a terrorist, what, do you have to have a beard? What, do you have to be a Muslim?
According to scholars, Islamophobia started with Muslims themselves back in the 1912, where modern Muslims would discriminate against their traditional brothers.
It was an inward look of the Muslims looking at themselves, critiquing themselves and asking themselves, what is the future of Islam if we don't reform? And so it was Muslim looking, discussing themselves. And so that is when the term Islamophobia started.
In the Middle East, countries like Kuwait, Qatar, Singapore, and United Arab Emirates have had strong, stable economies, healthy living and working environment as compared to their sister countries like the war-ravaged Syria, Iran, Afghanistan, Libya, and Pakistan, among others. In some of the war-damaged countries in the Middle East region, life has been very hard, especially for the haves-not.
In all the movies that you've seen, tell me one movie where you've seen guys from United Arab Emirates being stereotyped, guys from Qatar being stereotyped, guys from Kuwait being stereotyped, guys from... Why? Because ideally, those are stable countries, they are respected countries, they are powerhouses in themselves. And the West has invested so much in them.
In Kenya, various issues including extremist ideologies have led to the young people being recruited to terror groups. In our part 2 of this series, Renewed Hope, we tell you how poverty pushed some young Kenyans to join Al-Shabaab militia, their experience and their journey back home. We will also tell you of how media created the slain Abu Drogo, the self-made radical preacher, and the negative effect that his publicity had on Kenyan Muslims.